fine. I will ask a couple of questions. I welcome questions from you guys verbally at any time or drop it in the chat. If it's in the chat, I may or may not notice it right away, but Sarah has kindly said she'll jump in and read off any questions if they're relevant at the timing. So let's go. I'm going to share my screen with you now. Okay, so as you can see from our topic here, we're going to be talking about the CEFR, the Common European Framework of Reference. And I'll start with an overview, really. What is the CEFR? Very briefly. I'll talk a little bit about something called the descriptors, which are the can-do statements of the CEFR. And I'll finish off with some useful tools. And I suspect that's the main goal for most people. So I'll try and get to that as soon as we can. So I want to talk a little bit about my background. I have nothing to do with the creation of the CEFR, but I have used the CEFR a few times in my professional career. One of the main reasons was about 5 years ago. I was involved with the development of an association called English Philippines, and we endeavored to standardize all of the schools in the Philippines with a more global standard, and we utilized the CEFR in terms of the materials being used, the level systems of the schools, etc. So I had to take a relatively deep dive into the CEFR for that project. Since then, I've also been involved with creating materials and assessments. And in all of those cases, understanding the CEFR was very useful. You can see an example here. I was involved with creating a speaking exam called Top Score. We needed to align those scores with other standardized tests that were available, and had to take a look at the CEFR for that. Now, if you're like me and you've had a reason to look at the CEFR, you probably did the same thing I did, which is that you Googled CEFR and all of a sudden you came up with 200-page PDF documents that were developed by academics and bureaucrats for the most part. So that's a combination that's going to lead to a lot of sociolinguistic terminology and huge volumes of words for the most part. So it's really hard to parse through all of the data of the CEFR to try and find the useful bits, in my experience. So I have tried to simplify that. And one project I've worked on is just a small Amazon book, which is basically a dummy's guide to the CEFR. So today I'm going to take you through some of the learnings that I've pulled out from the CEFR that I felt were useful for me. And hopefully they'll be useful for you as well. Some of this does ride on the side of academic definitions, and I'll go through those fairly quickly. Some of my PowerPoint slides here are a bit wordy. I'm going to show them briefly. I'm not going to go through in a lot of detail. This is being recorded, so I urge you, if I flip by something that looks really interesting, to go back through the recording, pause, and you'll be able to read through some of the definitions in a little bit more detail. Our time is fairly limited, and I want to focus more on the actual key learning points. So a couple questions for you guys. If I could ask you to utilize the chat now, and could you tell me why are you attending this seminar? So is there a specific question that you want answered? Do you have a current or future need related to the CEFR? I would appreciate if you could share that with us right now. Sorry, I've lost my Zoom. Can anybody drop into the chat, why are you here today? Or you could just tell me verbally as well. Does anybody currently have a project where you're trying to align things with the CEFR? Okay, Aid, thank you very much. Interested in clarity on the can-do statements. Thank you. Anybody else?
I was interested in, for students who want to set goals or try to have students set goals at the beginning of the year or semester.
Okay, Great. So that, yeah, obviously the can-do statements will be helpful for you. So I'll take you through this kind of 4 different places in the CEFR where can-do statements are put in there. Julie, thank you very much. Streamline a 5-year English learning program for bilingual children. Look for different measures of progress. Great. So Katie, thank you very much. That's obviously a very clear goal. And I think you'll find that the CEFR has some useful standards or descriptors that could be helpful for you. Okay, I want to be able to evaluate text by CEFR level or write something of a specific CEFR level. Great. I think that's something we'll very directly address, and I'll give you some very nice tools to help you do that. That's something I've had to do as well. Trying to better understand student levels using a more standardized system. Andy, thank you very much. Okay, great, everybody. So we've got some nice clear goals here. Yeah, actually, and I'll share one of my own goals. I had somebody recently, a colleague I was working with, took a text and created a little exercise based on it, and then wanted to assess the level of the students, and grabbed another text, and somebody else looked at it and said, well, those texts don't match. The levels are quite different. And, they had a bit of a debate. Well, it looks about the same to me. They're both around 200 words. What's the difference? They asked me, and I was able to run it through some of these CEFR tools and very clearly say that the level of vocabulary did have quite a gap. Okay, we have quite a few people joining now. Thank you very much. Let me jump back into my PowerPoint here. Okay, can everyone see my PowerPoint here? Hello, looking at my trash folder.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, yeah, I'm just trying to get it into the slide mode. There we go. Okay, just a very brief overview. If you're not familiar with the CEFR, it has been developed through the Council of Europe. And I think that's important to understand that this was developed based on the context of Europe, where there are 47 countries in the Council of Europe, over 30 languages being spoken. And they felt that they needed a framework so that if especially somebody moved from country A to country B, that there was some way to consistently understand the level of their language ability. So if somebody studied Italian in France and they came with a certificate from the university saying they did a great job, they got 90%, what would that mean in Italy? And they found that that didn't really match well until they developed the CEFR as a framework. So the CEFR is not specific to any language. They are can-do statements based on any language for the most part. Okay, a couple of key points to understand that the can-do statements are viewing the user as a social agent or like a member of society that is using the language to accomplish a task. Okay. Many frameworks of language are developed based on vocabulary or grammar rules, and you'll see that CEFR has been utilized to develop those types of lists, but itself is not that kind of list. It is not an exam. It is not a textbook. It is a framework based on descriptors. Okay. I don't want to go through too much detail here, but basically there are 2 major publications of the CEFR. They're available online. If you Google CEFR, you'll be able to pull off the full texts of the original version and the update, which was done in 2018, and which basically updated, revised. It was not a major change. It was more of an addition that was done in 2018. Everyone with me so far? This is visual to show the basic levels. There are 6 levels, 6 basic, there are 6 fundamental levels of the CEFR. There are some sub-levels, and we can see it starts A1, A2. As teachers, we're all familiar with sort of basic level students, elementary level students. Independent, which would be in the pre-intermediate or intermediate phase. And the B1, B2, C1, C2, which we would generally consider to be high intermediate, advanced level students. Okay. There's the overview. All right, let's get into the descriptors. So If you do want to Google the entire text, these are the places you'll be able to find the key elements of the descriptors. It's messy. It's one of the reasons why I really had to spend some time to simplify it, but these are the 4 areas you'll find. We'll start with the global scale, which is the most, the general can-do statement. So it would start at the bottom for the basic level students, can understand and use familiar everyday expressions. Moving up to the advanced C2, can understand with ease virtually everything heard or read. If you are looking to create a simple rubric to explain the levels of your school, the CEFR is free to use. It cannot be used for any commercial purposes, but for educational purposes, it's designed to be used by teachers, by education industry members. So you can actually cut and paste the CEFR, and you can align the levels of your school, of your business to the CEFR. And the global scale is a good, general way to use that. Let me move on as we go to what's called the self-assessment grids. Now, these were developed through the CEFR, through the Council of Europe, for the user themselves, for the students themselves. So that they could keep a record of their language learning process, and they could create the number 3, the dossier, some evidence of their language and progress. And again, this was designed to allow for cross-border job searching, studying abroad through different countries in Europe, and so that there would be documentation that could be passed from the user to a school, to a job, etc. But there's some very good descriptors in here, which can be useful for us as educators. This, as opposed to the general one we saw before, has much more specific communicative language activity descriptors, and they are separated by the different activity themselves, like this: receptive, productive, and mediation. Mediation is kind of an interesting one. We don't normally talk about that, but it's the ability to summarize, to internalize information, and then communicate about that information. It may be in between 2 people speaking. It may be reading a text and explaining it to somebody. I'll get to more detailed descriptors of those, but right now I just want to show some examples of what these look like. I just, as example, I picked up reception listening. Give everyone a minute to take a look through that, and you can see how that develops from A1 on the basic side up to C2. Here's an example of spoken production. And you might notice that these are very kind of generic and relatively general descriptors. And one of the reasons for that is because it is not language specific. Because it's language neutral, there are, there's no sort of examples, and it remains relatively neutral. I don't know if that's a negative point, but it's just a reality of the CEFR. Now, other agents or other people or other organizations have created language specific details, and I'm going to talk about that more. Companies like Cambridge and Oxford, etc., have utilized the CEFR to develop English specific descriptors. Pearson has recently developed some great descriptors, which I'll reference a little bit later as well. Okay, we'll talk about the qualitative aspects of spoken language use. This is very useful. Particularly, I use this a lot when I was developing a speaking assessment. And these are by level. These are organized by level and include these descriptive areas of range, accuracy, fluency, interaction, and coherence. I'm a speaking examiner for Cambridge exams, and they utilize these descriptors quite a lot in their exam assessments. And here we can see examples by level. Again, relatively generic because they are not language specific, but can be very, very useful to create rubrics and to create assessment criteria. Okay. Jumping up to B1, B2. I'm leaving this on the screen for about 10 or 20 seconds so that you'll be able to come back and flip through. This is all easily searchable. So pay attention to the types of descriptors. And if you specify your Google search, not only CEFR, into some of the keywords like the qualitative aspects of spoken language use, you're going to be able to pull this up and find these in the CEFR materials that are available. C1, C2 is here. All right, let's get to the final one, which is the main source of descriptors. There are thousands of descriptors here, and this is where we tend to get into the sociolinguistic terminology quite a bit, and where our eyes kind of glass over and say, how am I ever going to be able to parse through and use all of this? And it's very, very comprehensive. And as I said before, it's very painstakingly phrased, is how I put it, because it is avoiding concrete language specific examples, but that's up to others to provide. And if you look at the paragraph here, the descriptive scheme provides descriptors of competences, communicative language activities, strategies to describe language use. So already we're getting quite a bit of definition. And we'll find that the descriptors, and if we want to think about a descriptor, we need to somewhat understand the difference between these different elements. So we have a competence, there's a communicative language activity, a communicative language strategy, which is based on, which is accomplishing a function within a domain. So if you're confused, so is nearly everybody who reads this for the first time, and I'll try and give a little bit of clarity of that fairly briefly. So looking at the competences, the CFR provides 4 competence areas, including communicative language competence, general competence, plurilingual and pluricultural competence, and signing competence. I think the first 2, well, actually, no, I will go in a little bit more detail about these. Communicative language competence covers these areas: linguistic, sociolinguistic, and pragmatic. Anybody want to ask me a question about those? I'm hoping you won't. Feel free to jump in. Obviously, the linguistic is dealing with the vocabulary, the grammar, most of the elements that we as teachers of English are dealing with. We cannot ignore the sociolinguistic or pragmatic elements. So I think the CFR, again, is really attempting to create a very comprehensive view of what people can do with a language beyond just the words themselves and the grammar itself, but how it is used within different contexts. The general competence is, for me, a very interesting one. They do not actually specifically have descriptors for the general competences, but they recognize that they exist. Basically, it took me a while to sort of get my head around this, but it's basically to show that things like the ability to learn, I think we as teachers know that some people, they get it right away and some people don't get it right away, that there are skill points, and that these types of general human nature competences do exist, and they do influence the ability to function and to use a language. I'll let you Google those or in more detail afterwards. The plurilingual and pluricultural competence is something really that we have to understand in terms of Europe, in where multiple languages are often learned at the same time. If we look at a country like Switzerland, for example, with multiple national languages, and I think we all know Europeans, we may have some joining the session today, where it's quite a usual case to grow up with 2, 3, 4 or more languages at the same time. And the CEFR recognizes that that interaction of languages is a factor in the development of languages itself, and that those are competences themselves, the ability to utilize more than one language essentially at the same time. That's what they're talking about. So those involved with bilingual education, I saw some reference to that. You may find that some of the descriptors regarding plurilingual and pluricultural competence could be very, very applicable to the type of research or the type of output that you're looking to make. Signing competence is something, it refers to sign language, use of sign language, and it was something that was added to the 2018 update. They recognized that that was something lacking. The original one was meant to cover that, but they found that there were some areas that didn't cover enough, so they added some specific descriptors for sign language. If anybody is involved in that in your teaching situation, you'll find these descriptors can be very useful for you. There are some references to intercultural and transversal competences, but they're not really specifically identified, but they are identified in terms of the reference materials to the development of the CEFR, so I included them here. Okay. The communicative language activity is probably much more familiar for everybody. The receptive skills, productive skills, interactive skills, and the mediation skills. Okay. As I mentioned before, mediation refers to the ability to facilitate understanding between other users. For myself, I've been involved with adult teaching in a business context, so I found the mediating concepts and mediating a text and mediating communicate, all of the mediating skills to be really very relevant, because very often our Japanese business students are involved in global projects where they're taking, information from the Japan side, and they're explaining it to somebody on a more global side, and that the descriptors, the mediation descriptors are very, very helpful when creating rubrics or deciding on materials or creating criteria for assessments. Communicative language strategies, we're going to look at some, actually, no, maybe I don't have exact examples here. I'm going to let you go and parse through the information yourself, but you'll see that it's more detailed descriptors, and the functions themselves are the same. You'll find those to be very task-based functions. Domains refer to the context in which the language is being used, educational, occupational, public, or personal. Okay, so anybody have any questions up to this point? Maybe I'm going to stop sharing so I can kind of see some faces right now. I got a lot of black screens. Anybody want to refer back to what I just talked about and ask a question? Anybody have anything?
I was thinking for curriculum design, like there's obviously so many different aspects that you've gone through there. I know a little bit about CEFR, but honestly, I hadn't seen a lot of that stuff. So it's kind of overwhelming. What are some kind of, what would be a good way to start if you're trying to create a program centered around the CEFR? Where would you start really? That's my question.
Adam, it's a very good question. Thank you. And actually the starting place is what I'm going to talk about next, which is the wonderful people who took the CEFR and said, how do we use this? And how do we create something, some tools for people in the education industry to be able to use that? And we're going to give our big thanks, you're going to see soon, to people like Cambridge and the British Council, etc., who took the CEFR and created some good lists of vocabulary, some grammar, and some great tools to analyze texts. So coming soon, Adam, good one. Anybody else? No. All right, let's get into the good meat of stuff now, because it's kind of the more fun stuff. So I'm going to come back into my PowerPoint briefly. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the great tools. I'm going to drop all of these links into the chat, so everybody can grab them. Please understand the chat is going to disappear. So if I drop something in the chat that looks useful for you, please cut and paste it into a Word document or wherever you like, so that you'll be able to go through and you'll be able to bookmark some of these things. So the English profile, actually, you know what, I'm going to do that now. I'm going to share my screen and we're going to just very briefly take a look through the English profile. If you've not yet seen it, but it is a searchable list of what users and learners can do based on vocabulary and based on grammar. And it's quite a nice one. So let me stop my share here. If you guys just give me a second, I'm going to cut and paste for you the 3 links involved with the English profile. And this is going to everybody. Okay, everybody, I just shared in the chat. You don't need to link to it now, but as I said, I really recommend you do a cut and paste and you grab that information. If you've not seen this before, it's quite nice and useful. So let me share my screen over to my Google Chrome. Here we go. Don't remember what I have open here, and I've already opened this up. So here you'll see, can everyone see the English profile website? Is that okay? Yep, great. Okay, so what we're looking at here, and take a look at the descriptions on the left side, the English vocabulary profile and the English grammar profile. They're both accessible on the left side here. I'm not going to spend too much time, but I do want to just show some of the capabilities. So there were references before, but you know how to use this. So for example, if you're trying to develop some materials, let's take a look at the vocabulary profile. Hello. Uh-oh. Let's hope my Wi-Fi is going to catch up to me. There we go. And you can select British English or American English. For simplicity, I'll just keep it on the British English. And great. Well, now we've got lots of searchable stuff. There's over 15,000 vocabularies, quite a large corpus involved here. And let's say you're developing materials, you're teaching kids and you want to talk about food and drink. And you want to create a lesson based on, let's keep it simple, some nouns related to food and drink, and they're for elementary level students. So you want to go through and you hit the search button and you get a nice list of vocabulary here: meat, fruit, fish, food, butter. It's very nice. You can select through and you can understand, okay, this is the expected, based on the CEFR, this is what A1 user can do, should be able to do. And okay, we could turn that off, and let's say we want to jump up and create our intermediate level exercise with the same goal. And we'll simply search there and we'll find some vocabularies: tin, takeaway, that is British English, saucepan, ingredient, etc., etc. And we can obviously go through the same and we can move up the levels. So this is based on vocabularies, and you can look through for a variety of different topic areas and then the parts of speech. Okay, anybody question on that? I'll let you play around with that. You've got the links now. It's quite fun to play around with. Let's take a look. If everyone's okay with that, I want to move over to take a look at the grammar.
I had a question about that. You probably,
please go ahead, Adam.
Probably don't know the answer to this one, but is it possible to like download the whole database with all the tags and stuff in it in some sort of form? Do they have any kind of...
You're correct in that I don't know. I'm going to guess not. And there are disclaimers. I mean, this is available to be used, but again, not for a commercial purpose. You're not allowed to say this has been endorsed by the English profile, for example. So I don't know if they're gonna just say, here you go. I'd Google that.
Probably not.
Some others may have done that, and certainly the CEFR corpus is available. We're going to look at one of the text analysis tools that really clarifies what is used based on the vocabulary from the CEFR. But I don't have a clear answer for that one. Thanks, Adam. Okay, so let's go to the, if you notice here, so we're going to look at the grammar profile that they do have a demo button on that was on the left side, and it's really worthwhile to go through. This is a fairly simple, similar thing where you can, it's basically, you can search for a specific thing, or you can just search based on level. And you could say, all right, what are the grammar elements that an A1 user can do or should be able to do? There's quite a lot. So if you're specifying adjective use, for example, you'll be able to go through and define that based on different areas. There are, you can level it here as well, and there are what they call the super categories. Honestly speaking, I've seldom done this. Most of the work I've done has not been grammar based. I've not really utilized the grammar profile very much. I have used the vocabulary profile. So I'll avoid questions on this one, but I'll urge everybody to go take a look through this, especially the demo. There are links to YouTube videos you can see here with some of the developers of these, and they'll explain the functions. You can see at the bottom here who was involved with the development of the English profile. Obviously, some huge brand names in our industry here, and very, very useful tool. Okay. All right, let's move on. You'll notice that the third resource that was here was the text inspector, which is provided through the English profile. But actually, in my experience, I'll give you, just save you a little bit of time, that I found the text inspector is not the best of the text analysis tools. So I'm going to share with you two tools that I feel are more useful for you. Just let me stop sharing for a minute because I'm going to drop these into the chat. Okay, you're going to find some links in the chat. Again, I urge you to cut and paste these. Something called Vocab Kitchen and the Oxford Text Checker. I'll take you through, yeah, we seem to be okay for time. I'll take you through both of these briefly. But I will mention that the Oxford Text Checker, I feel, is the most useful. It's the one I utilize the most. And I mentioned earlier that I did have the case of, people saying, I don't know, which one of these texts, they seem equal to me. It was the Oxford Text Checker. In 2 minutes, I was able to I clearly identify the difference between them. So let's go. Let's take a look at those. If you let me share my screen here. No, I'll just go back to there. Every time they update Zoom, I get myself all confused here. So vocab profiler. So this is Vocab Kitchen, which does have this is free to use, and there is they do ask you to join up as a member. There are a few other. You can see here this one. Absolutely, Adam, you talked about the vocabulary list. This one absolutely does use and clarifies the CEFR vocabulary list is involved here, the AWL and the NAWL. And let's grab a text. So what I did, is everybody familiar with breakingnews.com? I just kind of, whoops, is that sharing there? Where am I going? Hello. Jumping ahead. I just went into breakingnews.com and I grabbed an article here. So I'm kind of reverse engineering probably what the developers of Breaking News English do. I'm going to guess that they run the text through a similar analysis tool. And from that, they're able to simplify or make more complex, to level up or level down the text itself. So if anybody's involved in that kind of work, you'll find this to be very, very interesting, very, very useful. So jumping into here, oops, sorry, just a moment, please. There we go. So just cutting and pasting. Okay, so this is text. Can anyone see the screen? Scientists say, are you looking at that? Okay, great. And I've dropped it in here, and I'm going to utilize the CEFR. And what do you know? So if you take a look on the left, you'll see that it has very kindly analyzed that quite quickly. And it allows us, you can see the tabs here, color coding the results of that. So let's say, for example, you want to identify what are the difficult words, what are the challenging words that I would like to teach my students who are, for example, if we say that my students are high basic, pre-intermediate, so we'll make an assumption that the A1 and A2 language is already known. So we can, take those out of there. Let's hope they're already at a B1. And now we get this, a nice list of vocabulary that we would expect would be challenging or unknown for the students. We could look through this text and maybe we're going to decide, you know what, this is way too tough for my students. They're A1 level students. They're going to really be challenged here by the amount of vocabulary. If I put these back and I'll say, wow, I think experts say that students should understand about 90% of the vocabulary that we put in front of them. And that 10% can become the learning opportunity. If I look at this and I say, wow, this is, 50% of this is, I'm going to give up. This could be very, very useful. But let's say we want a bit of a deeper analysis. Well, this vocabulary profile helps us to identify and create a nice CEFR-based word list. So we can find our A1 level words are here. Click over here to our A2 level words, B1 level words, B2 level words, C1 level words, C2 level words. A little word of warning, the CFR, it does not always perfectly match with frequency use of Japanese learners. I have found in the past that words which were identified as C1 or C2 words are commonly used in Japan. Even I think communication is a C1 level word. Some words are used within, in a katakana version in Japan and are very well known, but may be identified by the CEFR as a more advanced level word. The opposite, of course, is going to happen as well. Some words may be listed as an A1 or A2 word, but they could be very, very challenging for our Japanese learners. So as a word of warning, it's not a perfect list, but it is a very good framework, which is what the CEFR has always designed itself to be.
It seems like the lists don't work terribly well for younger learners as well, because a word like in the text, actually, incidentally, words like seed were staged as B2, whereas the word seed is something that a kid would probably quickly pick up in a lot of different young learner texts and that sort of thing. Yeah,
exactly, Adam. That's exactly correct. So, I mean, I think it is worthwhile to consider the frequent use of vocabulary based on the context of our learners. And you may find that it does diverge from the CEFR's definitions or descriptors that they're using here. Okay. But rather interesting, isn't it? So as you can see, the Vocab Kitchen is a very nice tool, but let's jump over here to the Oxford Checker. As I said, this is I think this is kind of the gold standard. It's a really nice and useful tool here. I'm going to drop the same text in here and I'm going to check the text with the Oxford Text Checker. And in a similar way, it has color coded. And I can very click through and I can take away and identify what are my, let's see, are there any C1 level words here? Originated. This, I should identify. The Oxford Text Checker does not use only the CEFR. In fact, they do not identify it as the CEFR. The Oxford Text Checker uses the Oxford corpus of vocabularies. I tend to use the Oxford 5000. But I don't really have a real reason for that. But it is not specified as the CEFR, but it's very much aligned with, as you can see, and it is identified based on CEFR levels. Here we can identify. Sorry, I'll jump into the results. This is looks pretty. We got a nice definition, and I mentioned before that a lot of experts have some kind of a criteria of how much vocabulary the students should already know before they're given that text to read. Here we can get some nice numbers in terms of the details here. What's nice about this particular one is we also have the ability to create some activities. Oxford's very, very kind. Word lists are available. Oh, I didn't highlight, sorry. That's right. I can go through and highlight vocabularies that I would like to the students to learn. So I have some, I'm just very randomly doing this. Exportable as well. So I'm going to jump back to the Vocab Kitchen if you're looking, because I do remember that the Vocab Kitchen has a very nice tool where it will create a Word document, which I'm not sure if it's going to screen share. Can you see the Word document in the screen share? Yep, great. So it created a Word list. So Adam, you were talking about, can we get a vocabulary list? The Vocab Kitchen will create, based on a text, will give you a nice usable list of all of the vocabulary already in a Word document. Nice one, eh? Okay, going back to our text checker, final activity I wanted to go back to the text was exercise. So there is ability to create a gap fill exercise automatically through the Oxford text checker. And this you can cut and paste. You can export this as enter a source. I think this will go as a PDF. I've used this in the past. I've just cut and pasted this into a Word document. It's quite easy. Okay. All right. That is it for the tools I want to share with you that are internet-based. But before I finish, I just want to reference a couple of other tools that are available and potentially very useful for you, depending on what your goals are with the CEFR. So I've already shared the links here. I did reference Breaking News English, which is excellent, by the way. I'm a fan. Okay, very quickly, I'll talk about some other tools here. I will share the links in a moment into the chat. ALTE, which is the Association of Language Testers, has some very comprehensive shareable resources. So if your goal is to create particularly a high stakes assessment, I definitely recommend to reference the ALTE. The British Council on Equals also have some publicly shared resources. Particular use is what's called the core inventory. This is very much designed for teachers of English. It does tend to be a bit on the academic side, but there are some very, very useful resources involved in there as well. The English language portfolio itself. So I referred to this earlier, that this is designed for users, and it is basically designed for users in a European context. But again, if you're trying to design materials for students, you may find some good content in here. I'm just sharing this so the recording, you can go back and I will share the links with you in a minute. This is a relatively new resource I found on the internet. I've not utilized it myself. It looks very comprehensive. How do I say politely? This tends to be on the academic / bureaucratic side. So I found my eyes kind of glazing over as I got into the website itself, and there were many tabs to link, and it was hard to parse through to find the useful bits, but I do welcome you to take a look and see if it's going to match your needs. I referenced before the Pearson Global Scale of English. This is a great undertaking of Pearson to expand on the CEFR and to create a list of, actually, I should get Adrian to help me out here, but a list not only of the can-do descriptors, but how the can-do descriptors match different functions, particularly, I think, for in a business or real world situations, very practical tools. Is that right, Aid? Do you want to?
Yeah. Basically, there's a lot of links to the GSE. I don't know if if you know the GSC, if you don't know the GSC, it doesn't matter. There's actually another group which is quite useful, which is called ONET.
Okay.
ONET, which is an American-based searchable database on job functions. So you can type in the job that your student is doing, and the ONET will give you a series of descriptors and can-do statements, which are very, very similar to CEFR.
I understand.
CEFR.
If you could drop a link into that, or if it would be helpful if you could drop that in the chat, would be great.
Hang on.
Thank you very much.
I've just got ONET online.
Okay, cheers.
So I've got a document here, but I don't want to put it up.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, Adrian, thank you very much. Let me jump on because we're just about out of time. Basically, I'm about to open up the floor to any questions. This is a non-commercial presentation, but I will mention that I did create an ebook regarding the CEFR, and all of the details from today are in there, as well as all of the actual descriptors. Not only is it an ebook, but by purchasing this book, I do also have an Excel version and a soft copy of all of the descriptors, which took quite a bit of time to put together. And I'll happily share that. Of course, I'm not the copyright owner of the CEFR. It's for educational purposes only. I just thought I'd drop a mention of that. So let me stop sharing and turn the floor over. Adrian, thank you very much. I'll turn the floor over to all of you. We're just actually at the finishing point, but if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them at this stage.
So Eric, you said you could put the links of those things in the text.
Yeah, I'm just about to do that now. Actually, I'm not sure if I do have all. I've got the, yeah, thanks, Adrian. Okay, I've just dropped the link to the equals, to that ECML comprehensive one, and to the Pearson GSE as well. Great. Does anybody have any questions or comments or anything you'd like to add? Or if yes, I certainly welcome if anybody has any other tools or anything else related to the CEFR that you would like to share, would be welcome as well. Anybody? Feel free to speak out or drop a message in the chat as well.
Sorry, this is a completely random one.
Yep.
There's something which somebody mentioned to me in a previous meeting. The major publishers like Cambridge, Oxford, Pearson are all UK based. The CEFR was a European initiative.
Yeah.
Now, do you think that the collective amnesia of the United Kingdom population and the removal of the UK from Europe is actually going to have any impact on CEFR being used in the future?
Oh,
it's a European project. And there's quite an anti-European attitude at the moment in the UK where these major publishers are based.
I can't answer that. I mean, my understanding is that because I have communicated with them, the main office of the Council of Europe that oversees the CEFR is not UK based. And actually, one point is that you're thinking based on the English language resources available regarding the CEFR. Those are all going, for the most part, UK based. But I mean, there are Italian, the CEFR, there are Italian, French, German, all of the European languages have similar reference materials to something similar to that English profile that we looked at, which very much was based on, UK publishing companies and education companies. I honestly speaking, I don't know, but I think the CEFR is designed as a framework, will still be utilized. I should mention for everybody here, some of you may be aware, there are organizations in Japan which have created something called the CEFRJ, and I urge you to go check that out. I have no involvement with that, and I tend to not reference that, but what I can see looks like excellent work utilizing the CEFR to create something that is more relevant to what we're doing here. So I urge all of you to take a deeper study into the CEFRJ if you're focusing specifically for Japanese learners and users of English. that the CEFRJ does. My understanding is the A1, there's a, is broken into 2 levels because we tend to have more to create more definition of the differences of an A1.1 or an A1.2. I'm not sure how they define it, but for example, and a lot of great research is being done and developed through the CEFRJ organizations. They seem great.
So I still can't see those links in the
really?
chat box.
Oh, I sent that to Sarah directly. Oh, there we go. Thanks.
Sorry, got them.
So, Sarah should have shared those. I'm just joking. Sorry, I've got to make sure it's to everyone. Thanks for that, Adrian.
That's right.
There we go. Okay, everyone should have those links there now. Great. I think that's about it for our time. Anybody, any final question? Nope. Okay, I would like to say thank you very much for attending this session. I hope it was informative. And if I ran quickly through anything, I apologize. But go back and look at the recording. Hopefully you'll be able to look at some definitions. Everyone, please take good care. Have a great day and enjoy the rest of the seminars here. Okay.
So could we give
Thank
them some
you.
applause?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you
There
very
is a
much.
social room if you want to continue talking.
Okay, everyone head on over to the social room or grab some